All right, welcome back, you guys. And this week's reviewer of the week is Sean Derenzo. And she says, so inspired by this podcast. Hi, Stephanie. Found your podcast through the Breastfeeding Talk podcast, and now I can't stop binging it. I'm currently 8 months postpartum with my second baby, and you make me want to have another at home. Your words are so inspiring, and listening to the work you do makes me want to become a birth doula. Currently studying to be a certified lactation counselor, but who knows what else my future may hold. Ha! Thank you for the beautiful work you do for women and all the information you give to empower us through the most beautiful and life-changing moments of motherhood. I will never stop recommending this show. Thank you so much, Sean. And I'm kind of excited for you to tune in to this week's episode because we are talking about a couple who has had a baby or two at home, and she's preparing to do that again right now. So without further ado, will you guys take a moment and say hello and introduce yourselves? A little about what you do, because you guys have your own podcast and stuff, a little bit about what you do kind of professionally, but also how how this whole home birth thing came about and a little bit of your background, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hello. We are Sarah and Matthew Bivens.
Hello.
Of Doing It at Home. As you mentioned, that's kind of what we're up to on professional and personal side of things. We created Doing It at Home, our podcast, back in 2016 when we had a home birth for our first child, our daughter, and it inspired us sharing our story and then opening up this world and this platform to share other home birth stories over the past 6 years. And now here we are pregnant again, planning for another home birth. And it's a blend of our personal preparation and our family life and our relationship and parenthood, as well as continuing to add to this Rolodex of stories and information, because along the way we've become so educated, informed, empowered around home birth. We're very passionate about it, and that contributed to turning it into a business. And it's something that is so dear to us.
Yeah. We love supporting home birth families who are making the switch into home birth or just going there for the first time, because that was our story as well. And so we started the podcast, Doing It at Home. And, Sarah and I, we love working together. We love making babies together and doing life together. So thanks for having us on today.
Yeah, I love it. It makes me curious. And I know that we've kind of got a flow that we're going to go with here, but I just want to ask you guys, what was it that switched you from maybe what you had been planning prior? I assume maybe a hospital, but what was it that got you excited about home birth? What did that for you?
Yes. And we were planning for a hospital birth up until about 18 weeks pregnant with our first. And I would say what got us excited, or me, I'll speak for me, what got me excited about moving into home birth once we did, and it wasn't a straight and narrow path. We went back and forth a little bit. There were the what ifs, there were the fears, there were the doubts, there was pushback from friends and family of certain areas, and a lot of things to grapple with and contend with. And yet, once home birth really resonated true, I was so excited about creating the experience and feeling like we could be the creators of the experience versus walking into some place and being told what was going to happen to me, being told what was going to happen to my baby, and this is what you have to follow. With home birth, it felt so much more collaborative. It felt so much more co-creative in that there were our visions and our desires, and they were honored, as well as taking input from the wisdom and the experience of our midwives, our birth team, and other people that we knew who were supportive of our choice to have a home birth. So for me, the most exciting part of it was feeling like I had this huge say in this transformative life experience that was going to catapult me into motherhood and us into parenthood. And so just feeling like it was my experience made a big difference.
I'd say for me, it's very similar to what you're talking about, Sarah. And it really comes down to the moment when we realized that hospital birth is not going to be for us. And that was when we had an appointment with our OB, and we had been seeing him for pretty much the first trimester of the pregnancy. And we walked in there with a list of things that we would like to experience during the birth. And our list included things like we would like there to be water, a yoga ball. Sarah doesn't want to be hooked up to different equipment. She wants to be able to move around freely. And we went into that appointment, shared the list with him, and he simply said, no, you can't do that. I'm not comfortable with that. And that's against hospital policy.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that moment, we understood, okay, well, hospital birth is just not for us. We weren't yet on the track for home birth, but it was clear that a hospital birth was not for us. And that's because we were so clear that this was the experience that we wanted, that we listed out here in this piece of paper. Here are the things that we are, we know are going to be present at our birth. And it's simply figuring out where is the best environment that's going to support that. So that was exciting for me because it wasn't going to be us trying to fit into another model. It was us identifying the model that's going to work best for our vision. And for us, it ended up being home birth. And as Sarah mentioned, I had some fears, I had some what ifs. And after having conversations with the midwives who ended up attending our birth, as well as watching births, watching videos of home births, all of my fears and questions were answered. And I became a super advocate for our home birth, to the point where Sarah started to feel a little trepidation. And I was like, love, listen, this is meant for us. Like, we're meant to do a home birth. And then the two of us were on board 100%. But I'll always remember that meeting with the OB and just sharing with them, hey, here's our vision. Here's what we would like to experience. And when he said no, we said, okay, great. We appreciate the time that you spent with us.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be going elsewhere. And it was pretty peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And we went on our way.
It was an amicable breakup.
It was.
I have to say, you guys shared a lot of wisdom just within these first couple minutes of the podcast. This is kind of where I joke about the chicken egg situation, where I talk about the importance of finding a provider that is going to recognize and support your birth choices, but also you need to know what your ideal birth looks like. Mm. So you had done some research, to be able to say, I want a yoga ball, I want freedom of movement, I want to be in the water. These are things that I want, to be able to take that to your provider and say, this is my experience that I'm looking for. And then to find that provider that can help you get there. So I think that's really important. Everything you're saying right now is just so true for women that are listening. I hope that you're hearing, if you understand what you desire for your birth, your next step is to go find that supportive care team. The other thing I love is the communication between the two of you, because when that is synced and you're there supporting each other, even as you were explaining, like Sarah's getting a little nervous as we're getting closer to the home birth actually happening and stuff, and being able to say like, no, like we've talked about this and it's made for us and we're going to do this. That's so huge. So I want to thank both of you for just being clear and supportive of each other and that situation, and being able to share that so clearly with my listeners, because I know women are going to take away exactly what they need from that. And for moms that are listening, I hope that this is one of those episodes where you bring dad on with you. This is a partner episode too. And I'm so grateful to have both Sarah and Matthew with me today, because that's where it all comes together. Like, you guys you're talking about all the right things. So I love it. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious a little bit about your pregnancy. So did you have anything that kind of made it difficult or challenging in any way to be able to stay at home? Did you have anything like a GBS, or did you not choose to do the GPS? Did you have like a gestational diabetes thing? Were you high risk in any way? Was it a pretty low key pregnancy? What did that look like for you moving from hospital to home birth, as far as like how your pregnancy was going?
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I feel so grateful for. I feel so blessed. And it's also intentional in terms of our lifestyle choices and the decisions we choose daily, consciously to make up how we do life. I was very low risk. And that was part of the questioning too. Like, I'm not a medical condition to be managed. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not sick. Why do I need to do all these things in a place that is about treating sickness? And why do I have to wear a hospital gown? Things like that. So I was very low risk. I was very healthy. I stayed very active, strength training, I ran a 10K at 31 weeks pregnant. With the first one, I can give a couple highlights on this second one and how it is very different, but did that for the first one. And I did choose to do gestational diabetes testing. However, it was not with the colored drink. It was monitoring my own blood sugar at home, and with the instruction and support and guidance of my midwife, how to track it and what that gave us intel as far as what that meant. So that was negative. I chose to do GBS as well. That was negative. And we had all the green lights for being at home and for it being successful and for it being an effective experience, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of leads me into the next question, actually. Then, and this is what I know my listeners really want to hear. I want to hear a little bit about your preparation. You know, you kind of explained like I was active, I was healthy, I was doing these things. So what did your preparation look like to stay healthy and low risk and to be able to prepare for having an unmedicated out of hospital birth?
Yes, that's great. And you, Matthew, please chime in because pregnancy and mom brain are real. And so if there's things that there's holes or gaps, but then also back to having the communication, having a partner who's so supportive of you and having that teammate to cheer you on, to help hold you accountable to things, whether it's you're forgetting or you don't want to or whatnot. We have a level of trust and communication with each other that he'll check in with me on things. You know, he did last time and he's doing it this time with this pregnancy, whether it's how are you eating? Are you eating well? Are you getting enough food? Are you getting enough energy? All those things. He's great for that. And so I would say the prep first time around, and it's interesting to now be coming to the end of a second pregnancy to see the comparisons and have so much appreciation for how different pregnancies can be in the same woman. And I have so much more experiential knowledge around that now. So I look at it like my first pregnancy with Maya, our daughter, I feel like that was my gym baby in the sense that I stayed just as active non-pregnant pretty much. I modified things, of course, but in terms of my duration and frequency, I was in the gym, I was running, and it was a lot of finding my voice too. And I think that had to do with making the shift to home birth, right? Feeling very convicted in the choice. And so that looked like getting very clear on what I wanted. And so I feel like that pregnancy gave me this beautiful opportunity to find a level of grit within myself and a level of determination in myself through things like looking at working out as this microcosm for that, looking at that as birth training essentially, and parent and mommy training and life training. So looking at it from that perspective, and then having a lot of really beautiful, transparent, open conversations with people that I'm close to who could hold a high level of energy for me and for us and for the baby and for the birth. So a lot of that, I feel like it was a lot of self-work along with the physicality in terms of prep. And then great conversations and sessions and appointments with our midwives. That was absolutely a big part of prep. And I think those were the biggest contributors. And I could say that this time around, I have not been as much of a gym person. I'm still staying active, but not to the degree that I am not pregnant and not to the degree that I was in the first pregnancy. And so this one, I've been really honed in on nutrition. I've been really honed in on how I'm nourishing myself and how I'm feeding myself, as well as mindfulness techniques and how I am sinking into a deeper level of spirituality within myself. So those are some of the factors that I see when I kind of compare them side by side as to what's helped me the most based on what I feel like I need in that specific pregnancy, based on who each human is and maybe what they need and they're calling me to, as well as just what this kind of pregnancy warrants. So that's a little bit of double there, sharing the first and the second. But are there any things you would fill in as far as from the partner side of things or anything else you witnessed with me?
What I would add is prior to becoming pregnant, Sarah and I live healthy lifestyle. And for us, health is more than physical. We look at spiritual, emotional, sexual, physical, all the different areas. And a lot of what that looks like is making sure that we keep those areas of our lives filled up, like deposits in a bank account. We want to keep the account in the black, not going into the red. So getting into being pregnant, we were looking at, okay, let's make sure that we keep all these different areas addressed, that we continue to address these different areas and health in these areas. And then listening to Sarah's body And that's why I think with Maya's pregnancy, Sarah's intuition was, let me go on the physical side of things and continue working out. She felt excited to work out more. She felt excited to run the 10K at 31 weeks. And then during this pregnancy, it's been more of, as Sarah mentioned, nutrition, supplements, and nourishing her body in a different way. So our preparation very much has been holistic. It's been across the board with both pregnancies, making sure physically Sarah feels, her best, emotionally, addressing the fears and the what ifs that come up, addressing just sharing those moments when, hey, this pregnancy is tough, or hey, I have a doubt here, or whatever it is, just sharing those things so that they don't stay within her and fester. And the same with me. If I'm holding on to anything that I'm afraid of, or, have my own what ifs, I make sure to express it. And sometimes it's to Sarah, but sometimes it's to other people who can hold that space. And I'll give an example. With our pregnancy with Maya, our first daughter, we didn't know a lot of things about birth. I didn't know a lot of things about birth. I didn't know a lot of things about home birth. So our midwives gave us DVDs to watch so that we could see what birth was like. Mm-hmm. And Sarah and I watched a handful of documentaries. So I had maybe 10 examples of birth to go off of. And I leaned on those to see what, home birth could look like. Going into this pregnancy, we've been holding space on our podcast for 6 years. And over that 6 years, we've interviewed 350 potential maybe people and have heard their stories. So going into this pregnancy, I have heard a lot more. I've heard a lot of examples of things that went great and things that didn't go the way mom and dad wanted them to. So I just had more information now. And I found that it was having an impact on me. Like I was thinking more of the what ifs. I was thinking more of my own fears. And so I reached out to people that I'm close with, people who could hold space. And I just shared. I shared with them similar to as I'm sharing right now. And so that helped me emotionally release what I needed to get rid of so that I could stay, solid for myself and for Sarah in the pregnancy. So it's things like that we have been addressing, the physical thing, staying active, Sarah's nutrition, making sure that's on point. But then also going into the emotional side of things, going into the spiritual side of things, thinking about the mental side of things. Is there anything that's weighing on Sarah that's creating stress? If there is, how can we take it off your plate? We're entrepreneurs. We run multiple businesses. So how can we shut things down early enough to where you don't have to think about that so that you can focus your time and energy on baby? Yeah. So there's a lot of preparation that we did that you may not find in a birth course. And I think a lot of it was tuning in to what was causing us, dis-ease within ourselves. Like what was creating anxiety or stress or discomfort. Obviously there's going to be some physical discomfort with Sarah's body as her body is preparing for birth. But, there's other sorts of signals that both of our bodies were giving us, like, hey, you might want to address this. And we just had the courage to always address it. We weren't going to let things fester. So we were going to address everything. And I think that was one of the best types of preparation that we did, is when something came up, we addressed it.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I'm curious too, since you have listened to so many birth stories, and I know I definitely emphasize listening to positive birth stories. However, I think women who have had not such great experiences not only deserve a space to share them, but I also think there's something to be learned for other women that are listening as well. I look at, my first experience, and it's not what I would have considered a positive birth story. And certainly the way that I felt and the way I was telling that story, whether to myself or other people, was not positive. However, there was plenty to learn there. And that's what led to me having some better experiences. So I'm curious how you guys feel now that you've listened to all of these stories and you have the experience of listening to them coming up to this pregnancy. Do you have recommendations one way or the other? Or if you're listening to a not so great birth story, what do you do to either help yourself work through that or put a positive spin on it? What do you do with those birth stories that aren't so positive?
Yeah, that's really great.
Yep.
One thing that I would say is I would kind of call it energetic hygiene. And by that, I mean being very clear on when you're putting yourself in a certain space of a certain type of content. I'm like this, whether it's social media or it's movies or shows we're going to watch or music I'm going to listen to. I'm aware of my emotional state currently and how by watching this thing, does it support where I'm at? Could it detract from where I'm at? Or will it add to where I'm at? And based on that, what choice do I kind of want to make? And if it's something that could detract, how can I get my energy up maybe a little bit more than it is to compensate for that? So that's something I would put out there, is kind of do an internal check-in with yourself when you are delving into anything birth content related. Because if you're already in a fearful space about something and then listening to or reading or watching something that could add to that is really just going to bring it further down the rabbit hole. So I think those check-ins with yourself throughout the day, and when you do choose to put yourself in the space of birth education or empowerment, make a thing out of it. Make it acknowledge it as, okay, this is me sitting down to listen to these stories because I want to connect with my baby and I want to connect with this birth experience and I'm really excited and this is awesome. This is me choosing to do this. Just kind of have that internal talk throughout it. And I agree that there's value and importance for all the types of stories to be shared. And I think it's about managing yourself and your energetic emotional state to where you can listen to those things and not have it affect you as if it were you. Like you can hear it, you can take some of the factors from it, you can almost sift out the high intense emotionality of it and see where the red flags are potentially, or see where the things that you could avoid or things that you could talk to your midwife or care provider about because you heard that thing now, versus wearing it on and being very spongy emotionally and energetically. Because I'm kind of empathic in that way too. So if I, again, depending on where I'm at, if I go into a certain type of content, I can absorb that. And so I think it's just being mindful of that as well. And if that's a little too risky for you, then I would avoid those things, particularly in pregnancy. I would just avoid them. And if there's things that you need to talk out or work out as far as the what ifs or the things that you've learned about, bring that to your care provider, possibly to some other sort of mental health care that you could also have to support you going into pregnancy and birth. But I believe it's absolutely possible to take the lessons from less than powerful or what we may not have wanted experiences and really get something out of it to potentially minimize things like that in the future, and to also just feel understood and connect with others and validate their experiences. So I think it really just ultimately comes down to being responsible for where you are at and what sort of choices you want to make based on that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And, you know, it is great to, it's important to mention everybody's story is important. Everybody's story deserves to be out there and to be shared and heard. And then to Sarah's point, you know, understanding the impact that different types of stories have on you, you know, just because you never know what the impact will be. So checking in with yourself on that, because there is a lot of things that can be learned and gained from listening to a story where the outcome didn't go the way that the person wanted it to. You know, one of the questions that we ask the moms and dads at the end of our conversations with them is, you know, what wisdom do you have to share? Because no matter what the outcome was, no matter how the story went, there's wisdom to be shared. And a lot of times, you know, our guests will go ahead and share that wisdom without us asking because they're doing their own self-reflection. So I believe that that can be done by anybody. Self-reflect. Boy, if I was in this situation, how would we handle it? If this unexpected thing came up, you know, my partner and I haven't prepared for that, but how would we handle this? It does help you it can help you to prepare and feel like you can handle situations that come up. And again, it's really up to you. It's really up to, you know, the way that you and your partner are going about your preparation. So having that awareness of the impact that any story or conversation is having on you, I think is the first place to really look at. And then choose what supports you. Choose, you know, the conversations to engage in, the stories to listen or watch that are going to make you feel the way you want to feel during your pregnancy and during the preparation for your birth.
Yeah, I love that. It's also good. Thank you for
Great
sharing
question.
that.
Yeah,
And I'm going to use that term, energetic hygiene. Like that's going to be a new,
Cool.
I love that.
Great.
I love that so much. All right. So why don't you guys just dive into it? Let's go over that first birth from that very first contraction or whatever led up to it. Let's hear your birth story.
Yes. So it started with the Star Wars theme song. That's what I'll say. That's how it started.
Started with Star Wars.
Because we went to a concert where they were, Atlanta Symphony Orchestra was performing John Williams scores. And John Williams is famous for Star Wars, Harry Potter, Jurassic Park, and the Star Wars theme song plays as the concert wraps up, because of course you would wrap up with that. And we were heading to the car and we were just shy of 41 weeks. So I think the next day would have been 41. And as we were walking to the car, I was just very uncomfortable, more than what you could be uncomfortable status at almost 41 weeks. But my belly was super tight and I couldn't get comfortable in the car on the way home. And I just thought, oh, like this does not feel great. And yet I was not thinking this was the start. I just kind of thought it was discomfort that would pass. And we got home, attempted sleep. Sleep was not happening for me. I was just tossing and turning in the bed. And the discomfort reached a new level lying down in a bed. It just was not happening. So we're nearing 11 p.m., 12 a.m. And I just went to our bathtub in our guest bathroom. And I'm the type of person who likes to go to water. We had a birth pool planned and that I think it was already blown up. It was just kind of there on standby because, again, I didn't really know if this was game time or not. And hanging out in the bathtub for a while. I like to go to water when I don't feel well or just in all sorts of situations. And we just hung out for a bit and Matthew supported me and we chatted. I think we listened to some music maybe. You got me some water and just hung out like that for a bit until there started to become some consistency with these feelings I was having and a pattern. And I think we eventually reached out to our midwife around 2-ish in the morning after that had gone by for a while, because we kind of knew we didn't need to reach out to them until it reached a certain point. And now we're getting into the early hours of the evening. So I didn't want to reach out if nothing was going on. But by this point, my body had been cleansing. So I was going to the bathroom quite frequently. I lost my mucus plug. And again, with kind of this pattern to the pressure waves or contractions, however you refer to them, Matthew did that reach out probably around 3 a.m.
I'd say so.
Yeah. And I think Debbie, our midwife, said, cool, call me back when they look like this. So she gave us another marker as far as when to reach back out to her. I think we made note of that and just kept flowing. It was quiet. It was peaceful.
Yeah.
It was the middle of the night. Matthew was affirming me and stroking my hair and telling me things to be grateful for in the experience. I definitely remember that, him giving me this thing to hold on to mentally of gratitude through the experience, even when it seemed tough or even when there were kind of hitting a wall moments, that I could find gratitude in the experience. And that really stuck with me and was something great to hold on to throughout the experience.
Only thing I'll add is how much I loved those first few hours from 10 p.m. till 3-4 in the morning. It was, like Sarah mentioned, it was so quiet. It was us. The rest of the world seemed to be asleep and still. We had candles going. We had soft music playing in the bathroom. And it was just, so peaceful. And it was amazing to have that time prior to the rest of our team arriving and prior to things kind of picking up. It was a moment that we got to share as, partners prior to becoming a family. It's like, okay, this is the time for just you and I. And then, we know baby's on its way. So that was amazing. And then what we called midwife and they rolled up.
Yep.
And one of the things that I like to talk about with this is I knew that they were going to have equipment with them, but I guess in our midwife appointments, we never actually went over everything. And so when they came to the house, it was 3 of them. It was our main midwife and the 2 apprentices. And were they apprentices at the time?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so they come into the house, and I always say they were like, it's like in the Matrix where Neo and Trinity in the very first movie, and they walk into that office building and they're carrying black duffel bags. And our midwife team walked into our house with these black duffel bags. Each one of them had, 1 or 2 of these big old duffel bags. And they come into our bedroom and start unpacking them. And I'm watching like, oh my gosh, you have so much gear. I didn't realize that you have so much equipment. And they're pulling out, oxygen and needles and this and that. And it was pretty cool. It was great. So, cool. And at this point,
I'd moved into the birth tub by that point.
Tub.
Yep. And we had twinkle lights set up in our room. Again, a very peaceful energy and vibe in our bedroom. And that's where we stayed for pretty much the rest of the time. So we had a midwife and her 2 apprentices. And then over the course of the next couple hours in an order I can't remember, the rest of our birth team assembled and came. And our birth team looked like a collection of blood and chosen family that were there to support and hold space, and each had a very specific role, and each were very supportive of our choice to have a home birth. They had all witnessed birth or experienced birth, and that was important to us. And so we had a stacked team for sure. So Matthew's mother was there, and then 2 couples, so 4 other people were there, and so that made for a big crowd.
And we have a small master.
Yes, we do.
And one of the things it was important for us is we wanted anybody who was there, we wanted them to have a role.
Yeah.
And so, one person was in charge of food, one person was in charge of taking care of our dogs. One person was documenting by taking notes and video. Yeah. Somebody was acting as a doula for Sarah. And then somebody was there as a tag team partner for me, because I was very hands-on, doing a lot of counter pressure on Sarah's hips, a lot of massage on her body. I was always touching Sarah pretty much. So if I needed to go use the restroom or grab a bite to eat, this person would step in. And that was great. And so, it was a larger team, but everybody had a role and everybody was there and they knew their role. And they had all attended midwife appointments.
Yep. Everyone knew each other. That was important, that everyone had rapport.
They met at our home visit towards the end of the pregnancy. So everybody knew what they were doing. They weren't just, watching the whole time.
It was very purposeful. And maybe this is helpful to listeners and to the point of partners listening in on this as well. Something I picked up along our prep, I don't exactly know where I got it from, but I'd heard this thing that can happen in birth where dad, if he chooses to be very, very involved, like Matthew was from a physical standpoint as well as emotionally, that at the end of the birth experience, they were kind of fried and they weren't getting nature's cocktail of hormones to kind of support them in integrating the experience and everything and like coming back down to earth. And so I thought, if there's anything that could be done on our end so that Matthew could be fed and hydrated at the least, but then could also have some emotional support, almost like a daddy doula, I want that because I need him in great condition after the birth and thereon. So that's where that kind of came into play. Is I wanted support, of course, but then I really wanted Matthew to have support too. And so birth team is there, and I hung out in that birth pool 95% of the whole experience. And from that Star Wars theme song to baby arriving was 12 hours. And most of that was spent in water. That's just where I wanted to be. And I went very internal. I was pretty quiet. I vocalized at times during certain waves and had my low moans and things like that. But I mainly just went in. And I think it was very parallel and very indicative with how I went through the pregnancy and how I talked about going into this grit and going into this intensity of a physical experience. I was drawing on all of that to go into this birth. And I was drawing on all of those reps and times in the gym of practicing that acute stress and practicing breath work in times when my legs felt like they were going to fall out doing squats. I'm applying that here in these waves, and I'm working on my surrender and allowing them to just carry me where they will. And that was my experience in the tub. A lot of counter pressure on my hips. I had someone doing the clothespin almost the entire time as well. So I'm grateful for all those strong grips and fists. And at one point, the sun's starting to come up, and my midwife suggested every once in a while to use the bathroom, to keep emptying my bladder. They would warm up the tub. At one point, a walk was suggested. I wasn't really digging it, but I knew it could be helpful. So I had someone on either side of me just walk me down the hallway, and I was like, turn it around. We're going right back. That's enough. So I walked her right back down the hall. I just wanted to be still. And this is funny too, because we hear it on the show, and I had my own version of it. I had these visions of bouncing on a birth ball and this montage of flowers in my hair, and I'm eating and drinking, and I'm going for walks outside, and none of that happened. I just needed to stay in this birth pool and look at these colorful fishies on this birth pool and just be there. That's what needed to happen. And we are getting close to transition because I vomited. And at that point, hadn't slept the night before, really wasn't drinking too much because I just wasn't that interested, and I wasn't that interested in food. So I didn't have much in me. And to then be just vomiting on the floor of my bedroom, thinking that's when things started to creep in a little bit, like, oh man, how much longer? How much longer with this? And how much do I have in the tank? And it was more like logistical and strategic thinking versus like, I just want to give up. It was just, if someone could give me a gauge here, if someone could tell me, then I could work with that. But no one can really tell you that. And I remember going to the bathroom one more time, sitting on the toilet, looking at Matthew because he was sitting there with me. And that was my crisis of confidence moment. That was as we hear in the patterns and in the hundreds of stories, the moment you don't think you can do it anymore, you're pretty close to the end. But that was my moment.
Yeah,
and that was when,
Remember what you said?
I think I said, this really hurts.
Yeah.
That's just the way I communicated. But that was a full statement of, I don't think I can do this. Yeah. If someone gives me an out here, I'll probably take it. It was saying so much, and yet the only words I could get out were, this hurts.
Yeah. No, I remember that moment.
Looked at me with your beautiful eyes and gave me everything I needed in that moment.
Yeah, it was interesting because I wouldn't say that we prepared for that moment specifically. Yeah. Yet we had prepared for it in so many ways, and just the trust that we built between each other. I knew what Sarah's vision was. I knew what she wanted. Excuse me. I knew what she wanted to experience. She wanted to have this home birth. I watched her train emotionally, physically, spiritually. I supported her in the training. I was there through, doing our hypnobirthing course. So I understood, this is the moment as a partner that I pour my confidence into her. So when you're having a crisis of confidence, that's when I have an overabundance of confidence, and I communicate that. So when she said, this hurts, I was like, I get it. And you're close. We're about to meet our baby girl. And, just held so strong, so rock solid that she is able to waver in that moment and not see any fear in my eyes. Like, oh man, maybe we should pull the plug. Maybe we should call.
That wouldn't have helped.
Yeah, because that would have created a whole cascade. But I never felt that way because of all the prep that I did. It was like, cool, I hear you, love. Yeah. I get it hurts, and you're doing it. Yeah. And so then you move through that, and that was shortly after was pushing, right?
We came out, went to the birthing stool because my midwife said, why don't you just try sitting here for a few minutes and seeing how that feels? And I was open to that. And there we are sitting on the birthing stool, and she says, do you mind? Do you want me to check you? It was something, there was an ask, there was a consent. And I was like, yeah, sure. Let's see what's going on. And that's when my waters broke. And I felt some of the pushy sensation, but I'd never felt it before. And I'd never used these muscles before to do this very specific thing. So I appreciate my midwife in that she gave me some assistance with that and kind of walked me through it and helped me feel some of the musculature down there and gave me that guidance and gave me that confidence to feel like, oh, okay, I can do this. And a couple of practice pushes, if you will, and something locked in. And I thought, oh, I can do this. yeah, if I could do the past 12 hours of having these waves rock me around, now I feel like I have some grounding, I have some footing, I have gravity working with me. I can get into a bit more of an athletic, active mode. Something just clicked. And I just thought, let's do this. Let's bring this baby. I'm ready. And I wouldn't know until later that she wasn't engaged into the pelvis yet. Even at that point, she was still at a -2 floating. And I was determined. I think she was determined. And 45 minutes later, she came out and was placed on my chest. And that moment was quite surreal, as I'm sure many who have had it can relate. And very quickly, but very deliberately and very calmly, my midwife noticed I was bleeding more than she would like to see. And so she just said, everyone out of the way. We're getting Sarah to the bed. We shuffled me and baby over to the bed, and they just shot me with some Pitocin right in my thigh, and all was well. And from that point on, we got to stay snuggled up in our bed, and Matthew was there with us and birthed the placenta easily, thankfully. And we all sang her happy birthday. Matthew cut the cord. I had some minor tearing, and I was stitched up right there in my bed. I got to shower in my own bathroom, eat my own food, be in my own bed. And that was where I thought, oh, this is the way to do it. Like, to be in my bed, in my house. This is how it should go if you want it to. And that's a synopsis of the birth.
I want to add something real quick on the pushing phase. So Sarah was sitting on the birth stool, and I was sitting on a yoga ball behind her, and I had my arms sort of positioned around Sarah's shoulders, so that she could lean into the push, and I would brace her. And it was incredible to experience the strength that a woman has when she's pushing out a baby. I was so tired, and all I was doing was bracing. You know, I sat there the whole time just holding on and bracing. And every time you would push, love, like my whole body would lock up trying to hold you back. And I just remember my biceps being on fire, my back being on fire.
I believe it.
But to experience that amount of strength, like female queen goddess strength, was life-changing for me. I mean, I had an idea of how strong women were before that, but to physically experience that was humbling and awesome. You know, in every sense of the word, it was awesome. And Sarah pushed, so courageously pushed our baby girl out, and our midwife caught her. And it was so cool to see the faces, because I'm sitting behind Sarah. So what I see in front of me is a midwife, the support team, a couple folks filming. And so when baby comes out, I could see baby, but I can also see the faces of everybody else, and to see the faces that they made when my daughter came out was incredible. And then when they moved Sarah over to the bed, that's when our midwife said, "Okay, I would like everybody to move." When Sarah stood up, I saw the blood hit the floor, so it did trigger within me a thing of, oh, blood, bad, And what followed after that was just like a paternal instinct to almost shield Sarah from what they were doing when they were tending to Sarah and the bleeding, and put my body in between Sarah and the midwives so that Sarah could focus on the baby. And so they moved Sarah to the bed. She has baby Maya on her chest. And, my whole focus right then was, let's just focus on this baby. Yeah. Let's look at what you did. Look at what you did. In the back of my mind, I'm wondering, okay, how intense is the bleeding? Like, what's going on? Are they going to be able to take care of everything? And they did. And so for me, when we got the sort of the thumbs up that everything was cool, it allowed me to really just sink into this moment of, oh my gosh, we're parents now. And I remember after we got that thumbs up and everything was great, I just stood up and I hugged everyone in that room and just cried on their shoulder, just thanking them. Like, thank you for being here and holding space for the way that you did. And then, as Sarah mentioned, it was so amazing to be at home and do everything in our bedroom. Sarah got to lay in bed, and We did the little, what are they called? The tests, APGAR?
Yeah, all the, weigh the baby.
Yeah,
Baby
all
goes for
that.
a little ride in the
All
little
those things.
stork.
And, just hearing the chit chat of conversation around the room, it's like this happy moment of everybody talking about different things. So it was incredible. It was beautiful.
It was.
Well, thank you both for coming on this show today, for sharing with so much vulnerability and clarity for the women that are listening and preparing for their own births. I'm grateful for you guys and for your story and for the work that you're doing. For those that are listening, if you're looking to connect with Sarah and Matthew on their podcast or get in touch with them in any way, I'm going to include all the links in the show notes for you guys, so you can just click right over to their information. But thank you again so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.